So if you're building something ambitious,
Right, a new career path, a major company.
yeah, or even just trying to build a totally new skill, you're going to run into it.
Inevitably.
That sting of being underestimated, it's that moment, when someone looks at your big idea and then they glance at your background and they decide you're not the one. We call that undercredit.
And that feeling, that sense of being overlooked,
Yeah.
of struggling to get any traction because you don't have the traditional pedigree or that stamp of approval,
Yeah,
it's painful.
it really is.
But it's also an almost universal starting point for every world-class builder we've ever studied.
Hmm.
So today, we're going to try and turn that pain into a strategic blueprint.
And that's exactly our mission for this deep dive. We've gone through your source material, this really powerful collection of case studies from top entrepreneurs, and we are going to break it all down.
The goal is to get a clear, structured understanding of how these builders used rejection and, low recognition, not just to survive,
But to actually sharpen their strategy.
to sharpen their strategy, to refine their product, and in the end, to outperform the people who got all the credit and funding right at the start.
So we're taking this idea of undercredit and we're flipping it from being this, personal failing to a strategic asset.
And to really set the scene here, we have to start with a statistic that just completely reframes what rejection even means. Think about pure endurance. When Howard Schultz was raising the first $1.6 million for Il Journal.
Which was the venture that eventually bought Starbucks, right?
Oh, exactly. The company that basically created modern coffee culture as we know it. He had to pitch 242 potential investors.
242 separate pitches. That's unreal.
And 217 of those conversations ended with a hard no, a confidence-crushing no.
Wow.
And what the sources suggest is that this wasn't just some setback he had to recover from. It was the process. It was a strategic process he had to endure and then, weaponize.
217 rejections. I just can't get over that number. That is a brutal amount of personal effort and just psychological resistance.
It is.
So over the next, say, 30 to 40 minutes, that's what we're going to unpack. We'll explore 5 really powerful strategies that these entrepreneurs, Schultz, Madam C.J. Walker, Melanie Perkins, James Dyson, the founders of WhatsApp and Alibaba, how they used that low credibility start and turned it into a compounding advantage.
The core insight here, the thing we really want you to walk away with is this. Undercredit is just information. It's not your identity.
Right.
It only becomes rocket fuel if you choose to reframe it strategically. It tells you where your story is weak, who the wrong partners are, and maybe where your product just isn't refined enough yet.
And if we had to boil this whole deep dive down to one core conflict, it's this distinction, right? The world will always offer a shortcut.
Always. Applause, early funding based on status.
But the real long-term advantage, the one that compounds, is always endurance. It's methodical refinement based on proof. And today, we're here to explore endurance. So let's start with Howard Schultz. Let's dig into that stamina advantage. Okay, let's really unpack this journey with Howard Schultz, because that moment in 1985 when he makes this pivot, it's incredibly risky.
Oh, massively. He walks away from a safe, rising career path inside a small Seattle coffee company.
A job most people would kill for at the time.
Absolutely. And he does it to launch Il Giornale based on this vision he had.
The Italian espresso bar experience, the third place concept.
We have to zoom out for a second to really appreciate how radical that vision was in America in 1985.
It's so standard now, you don't even think about it.
Right. Today, the coffee shop as a hybrid workspace, a social hub, a place for ritual, it's completely normal. It's global. But back then,
Not at all.
Americans drank coffee at home.
Right.
Or they drank, weak filtered coffee in diners or the office. The whole idea of paying a premium for a shot of espresso and just lingering in a European-style place was completely alien to the mainstream.
So right off the bat, his concept is seen as niche, it's seen as expensive, and probably not scalable. But the problem wasn't just the product idea, was it? It was his perceived credibility.
Absolutely.
Huh.
The sources spend a lot of time on his background, and it's key to understanding why investors reacted the way they did. Schultz grew up poor.
In Brooklyn, right.
Federally subsidized housing in Brooklyn.
Yeah.
He didn't have that Ivy League pedigree or the comfortable background that just signals safe bet to a traditional VC.
And there was something even deeper there, something from his family history.
Yes. Critically, he watched his father struggle after a work injury. There was no safety net, no health insurance, no workers' comp. And that experience wasn't just formative. It created this deep, almost desperate desire for control and success.
Which can read as high risk to investors.
It often does, yeah. So He comes to them with a high-risk concept and what they see as a low-credibility background. And the market responds with that staggering rejection rate. 242 pitches, 217 no's.
But so I have to ask, how do you, as a builder, physically and psychologically endure that? I mean, most people would quit after the fifth, maybe the 10th hard rejection.
Yeah.
You start to internalize that no as a verdict on your worth.
And that is the critical distinction. That's the whole game right there. The builder who makes it through does not internalize no as a verdict on their identity.
So what do they do instead?
According to the case studies, Schultz treated that constant stream of rejection as a strategic process of sorting. He was relentless, sure, about earning belief one conversation at a time, but he saw the conversation primarily as data collection.
Okay, let's get tactical. What does stacking rejections as a filter actually look like day to day?
It means every no clarified something he needed to get ahead of in the next pitch. He didn't hear, "No, I don't believe in you," and think it was a failure. He heard, "This conversation showed me I didn't frame the shift in American consumption correctly," or "This partner only invests in safe, proven models, so they're not for me." He was sorting through the wrong partners, the wrong framing, or his own wrong assumptions. The rejection wasn't stopping him. It was sharpening him.
It was giving him this incredibly expensive real-time market feedback
Exactly.
that a founder who gets easy early funding just because of their pedigree, they completely skip that step.
They skip it entirely. The early credited founder can get complacent. The undercredited founder, though, has to manufacture perfect clarity just to survive.
And that's the stamina advantage you mentioned.
That's it. If you can tolerate being underestimated for longer than other people can tolerate being doubted, you gain time. Time to compound your skills, time to build that critical early traction.
And time for the market to finally catch up to your vision.
Right. Our sources are clear. This pressure forged his pitch discipline and his resilience in a way that early validation never, ever could have.
But I want to push back on that a little. How do we know that confidence built from rejection is inherently better than confidence from early success? If you set a no quota, I'm going to get 25 rejections, aren't you just prioritizing failure?
That's a great counterpoint, and the sources really differentiate between chasing any money and chasing proof. The quota isn't about failing. It's about forcing activity.
Okay.
If you're aiming for high-quality partners, you have to accept that they're rare. So rejection is just the statistical norm. The advantage of being undercredited is that you can't afford to be arrogant. If your confidence comes from surviving 217 no's, it's reinforced with steel. If it comes from one VC saying yes because they knew your dad from college, well, that's a much more fragile kind of confidence.
And the outcome here is the ultimate proof. Within 2 years of launching Il Journal, the idea 217 investors passed on, it was successful enough to buy Starbucks' entire retail operation for $3.8 million.
The idea that couldn't get funded became the platform that acquired its predecessor.
It's the physical manifestation of earned belief. The core principle really holds up. Undercredit forces proof, and it builds stamina. He couldn't lean on status, so he had to build undeniable receipts.
And that leads us right into the tactical tools we can pull from this.
Okay, let's give the listener something concrete. The first tool from this deep dive, set a no quota.
Yes. This is a behavioral shift. We are all naturally motivated to seek yeses, which makes us terrified of rejection. But if you consciously set a goal, my job this month is to collect 25 no's, rejection instantly transforms
From a personal failure.
into progress toward a goal you set for yourself. It turns the whole thing from this emotional pass-fail test into an objective data collection mission. You control the activity, even when you can't control the outcome.
And hand in hand with that is running a detailed pitch autopsy. How is that different from just, moping about a failed meeting?
The difference is urgency and specificity. You don't just process your feelings for a week. You process the data immediately while the sting is still fresh.
What questions do you ask?
An autopsy asks, was this rejection because my problem statement was unclear? That's a clarity issue. Was it because I lacked customer retention data? That's a proof issue. Or was it because the investor just didn't get the market shift? Yeah, that's a framing issue. You have to separate a no to me from a no to the idea or a no to the terms.
That's a huge distinction. It helps you iterate the pitch deck, not your self-worth.
Exactly.
And finally, the proof stack. Since status is off the table, you have to build this thing. What goes into a proof stack?
It has to be quantifiable. Forget vague claims. A proof stack is a one-page document. It lists customer results, key metrics, tight unit economics.
Yeah.
It speaks for you when you don't have the status to speak for yourself.
For Schultz, that would have been what?
It would have detailed reports on customer frequency, showing that Americans were adopting the ritual. It would have been the customer lifetime value from those first few stores. The cost of acquisition versus revenue. It's evidence so undeniable it preempts the most common objections before they can even be spoken.
The sources also suggest a key habit is tracking your next ask immediately, like booking the next meeting while the last rejection is still fresh.
That is pure momentum protection. You don't stop when you feel bad. You use the emotional energy of the rejection, that little bit of anger or frustration, to fuel the next scheduled action. That's how you build stamina that compounds.
So rejection doesn't block wealth.
Hmm.
Your need to be believed first does. It's a powerful idea, and it sets us up perfectly for our next case study, which is about building assets so powerful the gatekeepers are forced to pay attention.
So now we move to 1912, Chicago, and the story of Madam C.J. Walker. And her challenge, it wasn't just a lack of funding like Schultz faced. It was systemic institutional invisibility.
Right, stemming from both her race and her gender in early 20th century America.
It's really the purest form of undercredit you can imagine.
Being objectively qualified, but still treated as if you don't even belong in the room. I mean, her story, she was born Sarah Breedlove in 1867, orphaned young, started as a laundress, a really difficult low-status job.
But she developed this incredible expertise in hair care solutions, learned the business from Annie Pope Turnbow, and then moved to Indianapolis in 1910 to formalize her company. She had the expertise, she had a product, solving a real need, and she had phenomenal sales traction.
She had everything. And yet, despite all that undeniable success, she was still treated like a fringe element.
And the specific incident at the National Negro Business League meeting in 1912, this was a major convention for influential Black entrepreneurs, mostly men. It illustrates this perfectly.
The files confirm she was basically snubbed by Booker T. Washington.
He controlled the schedule. He didn't grant her the status of a headliner, even though her enterprise was huge.
So she had the data, she had the results, but the people in power were not giving her the platform she deserved, so she didn't wait for a polite invitation.
No, she did the truly entrepreneurial thing. She seized the podium anyway.
She turned that deliberate slight, that systemic ignoring, into the very core of her pitch.
And we have to analyze the radical reframing she did in that moment. She didn't try to hide her past. She used it as the foundation of her authority, her credibility.
She realized the story of her struggle was way more compelling than any formal business plan.
And that quote is just iconic. She didn't just mention her background, she structured it as a deliberate progression. She said, "I am a woman that came from the cotton fields of the South. I was promoted from there to the wash tub.
Then I was promoted to the cook kitchen, and from there I promoted myself into the business of manufacturing hair goods and preparations."
The language is so key. That word, promoted, over and over again. She took the very labels people used to minimize her. Cotton picker, laundress. She converted them into steps on a ladder.
A ladder of self-determination.
Of agency, of economic progression. It wasn't a story of shame. It was a story of competence earned through hardship. This is a foundational strategy for anyone who's undercredited. Your difficult past is not a flaw. It's the unique origin story of your competence, as long as you frame it as lessons learned.
But she didn't just stop with a great speech. The core principle she embodied was that if you are undercredited, you have to be over-prepared and overexpressed. You can't wait for recognition. You have to speak with authority until recognition is forced to catch up.
And that authority wasn't just built on rhetoric. It was built on physical, undeniable infrastructure. Walker didn't just sell a few jars of product. She built systems.
Standardized systems.
Standardized systems. She established factories. She launched educational institutions, the Lelia College for Hair Culturalists, and created this massive sales force of trained agents, mostly Black women, who were trained not just to sell her products, but to create their own economic opportunity.
This is such a huge wealth builder's advantage. Build assets that don't require permission. If your success depends on a big magazine writing about you or a bank approving your loan, you are limited by their schedule, their biases.
Their metrics. Walker just bypassed the gatekeepers entirely. She created her own economic ecosystem, her own distribution channels, her own credentialing system.
Credit is always slow,
Yeah.
but compounding results are not.
Compounding results are immediate and undeniable. If you have systems, a repeatable sales script, a productized offer, detailed training docs, those systems scale past your personal reputation. They keep earning and building trust, even if the gatekeepers don't think you're credible yet.
Let's talk about the specifics of that system. What did her training actually look like? Why did it compound so powerfully?
Her system was radical because it was so standardized and replicable. The Walker agents weren't just salespeople. They were trained professionals with certificates from her colleges.
So there was a standard of quality.
A high standard. The training documents, which were basically early standard operating procedures, codified everything from how to use the wonderful hair grower to professional presentation, bookkeeping, customer service,
So that guarantees a consistent brand experience.
which is the engine of repeat business. And the commission system was transparent and generous, so the agents were highly motivated to build their own businesses under her umbrella. That incentive created incredible loyalty and viral distribution.
So how do we apply this tactically today? How do we turn that feeling of being ignored into an action?
You have to substitute resentment with action. The takeaway is to counter being overlooked, not by retreating, but by immediately executing 3 value-forward messages. A detailed case study, a small win with numbers, a demonstrable result you can send out. You force value into the ecosystem whether they believe in you yet or not.
And we have to master that origin to offer story.
Absolutely. Write that 90-second Walker-style pitch. It has to be a clear ladder. I started here in a low-status place. I learned the mechanics of this business from the inside out. I built a repeatable company. And now I sell the solution and the opportunity. It turns your history from a liability into the unique reason you're qualified.
And the final piece here is focusing on the repeatable system over just a personal brand.
This is so crucial for scale. If your business depends entirely on your charisma or your personal hours, it is not scalable wealth. You have to focus on building assets that scale past you. Training docs, SOPs, productized offers.
If they won't credit you, outgrow the room until credit has to chase you.
Exactly. Claim the room with preparation. Bring crisp numbers, clear outcomes, and a specific ask. Undercredit absolutely hates receipts.
That structural clarity she built is a perfect bridge to the story of Melanie Perkins, who took rejection and applied this systematic, almost scientific refinement to her pitch, turning all that skepticism into clarity.
So the story of Melanie Perkins and Canva is really a masterclass in iteration speed. We're fast-forwarding to the early 2010s. She's in San Francisco, and she's pitching this graphic design software company.
And the goal is to democratize a famously difficult, expensive process.
Right. And the sources paint this very vivid picture. It's 2012, she's sleeping on her brother's floor, living out of a suitcase, and just facing this wall of skepticism.
And it wasn't just a simple no. It was like 1,000 different nuanced ways that VCs say no when an idea doesn't fit their neat little profile.
She was hitting several major structural barriers at the same time. They questioned the co-founders dating, the company being based in Australia.
The huge one.
Huge. A lack of technical pedigree compared to Silicon Valley natives, and just the sheer audacity of trying to take on giants like Adobe.
Let's pause on the overseas objection for a second. For our listeners who don't deal with VC structures, why is that such a consistent barrier?
Well, it creates complications in a few key areas. First, you've got legal and tax structures that add complexity.
Okay, makes sense.
Second, time zones just make communication and quick problem-solving a nightmare. But most importantly, it limits the VC's ability to be hands-on, to be on the board, introduce local talent, manage the culture. For VCs, proximity often equals lower risk. Being in Australia put her in the too hard pile.
And the default response to that kind of rejection is to feel invalidated, to think they don't believe in me because of where I live.
Right. But Perkins had this incredible advantage. She'd already built something successful, Fusion Books, their yearbook business.
So she had psychological ballast.
Crucial psychological ballast. She and Cliff Obrecht had already proven they knew how to sell, how to ship a product, how to handle cash flow. So she didn't see rejection as a stop sign. She saw it as incomplete data about her pitch. She thought, I'm not doomed, I'm just being unclear.
Our files say she heard over 100 no's. And instead of hearing rejection, she heard feedback. She didn't think the idea was wrong. She thought her explanation of the idea was wrong.
She literally treated the pitch deck itself as a product that needed bug fixes and version updates.
That's a powerful reframe.
It's everything. Think of the pitch as a narrative funnel. Every tough question, every moment of hesitation from an investor, it revealed a leak in that funnel.
So she learned to shift her focus.
Dramatically. From describing features our software as drag and drop in a huge library, to explaining pain and magnitude. The way things are now makes design software so difficult and expensive that everyday communication, from a marketing flyer to a birthday party invitation, is blocked.
So she stopped leading with Canva and started leading with the agonizing cost of design difficulty. That reframing makes the solution seem not just nice to have, but inevitable.
She iterated that deck after every single tough meeting. She was pressure testing the story, not just testing the market. And the core principle here is undeniable. Convert under credit into iteration speed.
Investors denied her prestige.
So she was forced to manufacture clarity. This pressure leads directly to competence. If you get easy money early on, you might never be forced to explain your vision with that kind of surgical precision.
It's true. Credit is almost always a lagging indicator. The market rewards the 20th version of you, the one that's been pressure tested by 100 skeptical conversations, not the first version with the bold idea.
And the question shifts. It moves from, why won't they believe me, which is all about emotion,
To what proof would make belief inevitable, which is all about systems and data.
exactly.
So let's get deep into the tactical tools here. The first is to build a no map. How exactly should you structure something like that?
This is critical data hygiene. A pitch autopsy is immediate and qualitative. The new map is long-term and quantitative. You have to log the real, objective reason for the rejection, not your emotional interpretation.
So you write down investor cited overseas base or investor flagged lack of quantifiable traction.
Exactly. Market size unclear. Lack of defensive moat. Then you cluster the patterns weekly. If 5 different VCs tell you your unit economics are too high, that's not 5 rejections. That's one massive data point telling you to fix your finance slide.
It turns that emotional pain into an objective action item. And then there's the discipline of rewriting the first 60 seconds of the pitch.
This is the most valuable real estate in the entire deck. Lead with pain and magnitude, then the solution. If you haven't hooked them in that first minute by clarifying the immense cost of the status quo in time, money, lost opportunity, everything else you say about your features is just background noise.
And the undercredited founder can't afford background noise.
They have to be instantly captivating.
And I really love this last tactic. One slide wins.
It's the ultimate tool against skepticism. For every single persistent objection, you manufacture one devastating slide that just obliterates it.
Give me an example.
If investors keep doubting your ability to handle competition, you deploy a slide showing a clear feature gap that would take Adobe 18 months to even replicate. If they doubt demand, you show a single chart of daily active users growing 10% week over week. It's undeniable evidence designed to just cut through the noise immediately.
So she versioned her pitch like software. Deck V1.1, V1.2, V1.3 after every meeting. No ego, just new releases.
If they won't give you credit, give them undeniable proof.
This scientific approach to failure is what we see reflected maybe even more intensely in our next case study, which is all about the sheer stubborn volume of attempts. James Dyson.
Right, so if Schultz's number was 217 rejections to his concept, Dyson's number is 5,127 attempts before finding the working model. This case study is all about physical, undeniable, sustained volume that eventually builds an insurmountable product edge.
5,127 prototypes, tested over 5 years before he landed on a functional bagless vacuum. Can we just sit with that number for a moment?
It's almost incomprehensible.
That is just a repetitive, stubborn, hands-on, high-velocity work, adapting his industrial cyclone particle collector idea into a household product.
And we have to emphasize the context of that struggle, which the sources really detail. This was not some well-funded R&D lab with an unlimited budget.
No.
He was, and I quote, incredibly short of money. He was growing his own vegetables. His wife was making clothes to bring in some essential income. This was 5 years of operating at a survival level, while his idea looked completely insane to everyone else.
The psychological toll of that must have been enormous. To keep going when the financial cost is so immediate, so personal.
How did the source material suggest he maintained that mental endurance? When 5,000 attempts have failed, how do you keep the conviction that 5001 might be the one?
It seems impossible.
He fundamentally separated his identity from the outcome of any single experiment. He chose method over pride. The world kept telling him he was a nobody, and his idea was impossible, so he chose to make nobody dangerous through a sustained, predictable volume of attempts.
So a failure wasn't a sign to quit.
Not at all. It was just a data point that guided the next, slightly improved attempt. He wasn't emotionally invested in prototype 142 succeeding. He was methodically invested in the process of iteration itself.
So the technical challenge was failure type 1, but then he hits failure type 2, market rejection. The traditional vacuum makers, the big incumbents, they showed zero interest.
Right. And why would they? It wasn't about the technology being inferior, it was about their ecosystem.
It flattened their business model.
Completely. Dyson's bagless vacuum fundamentally threatened their most lucrative profit center, the vacuum cleaner bag. They sold millions of dollars worth of replacement bags every single year.
So crediting the outsider, Dyson, would mean admitting their entire highly profitable revenue stream was obsolete.
Exactly. They actively didn't want his innovation to succeed. It's a classic case of undercredit being perpetuated by incumbents who are just protecting the status quo.
So he was told no twice. Once by physics, 5,126 times.
And then once by the entire market.
And that forces you to create this principle of prototype compounding.
Yes. Small, incremental improvements.
Yeah.
When they stack up over 5,000 cycles, they create this unbridgeable gap in product quality that no amount of marketing spend or pedigree can ever close. By the time Dyson manufactured his own product, his edge wasn't marginal. It was structurally superior.
The default human habit, like you said, is to protect our pride. If something doesn't work quickly, we retreat because it's embarrassing.
But the wealth habit is to protect momentum. If it doesn't work quickly, it's just information, and you accelerate the iteration cycle. That separation of ego from method is the key to enduring 5 years of that kind of hardship.
And his win, in the end, it felt inevitable. Because the product edge, the pure engineering competence, was strong enough to withstand all the skepticism from manufacturers and retailers who looked at this weird, expensive machine and just asked, who on earth is Dyson?
Our sources note he actually had to seek validation overseas at first. He sold the G-Force cleaner in Japan, where it became a huge success and won a design prize.
Why was that overseas validation so necessary?
It provided the receipts that the UK market wouldn't grant him. He could come back and say, look, this product is a commercial success in a highly discerning, technically sophisticated market. Your skepticism is based on tradition. My proof is based on revenue.
And even then, it was still a struggle.
Oh yeah, retailers were still resistant because of the distribution problem. He was an unknown. He had to use that success in Japan to raise the capital to open his own plant in 1993.
And the result speaks for itself. Within 2 years of that, the Dual Cyclone became the top-selling vacuum in Britain, even though it was priced way higher than the competition.
He didn't win on price. He won on undeniable quality built through a mountain of R&D.
So let's translate that intense volume mindset into tools for our listeners. First, adopt a failure quota.
This sounds a lot like the no quota for pitching, but it's for product development.
Exactly. You're not trying until it feels bad. You are committing to running 30 measurable attempts. That quota forces you past the initial emotional barrier. It makes failure predictable, even required.
And when you're running those attempts, the sources really stress single variable experiments.
That's non-negotiable scientific discipline.
It has to be. Change only one thing per iteration. If you're A/B testing a sales page, change the headline or change the price, but not both at the same time.
Because if you change 3 things and it works, you don't know why it worked.
You've learned nothing. If you change one variable and the needle moves, you have a clean, useful piece of information you can stack on to the next attempt.
And finally, that lesson from the retailers. Use rejection as market research.
The retailer saying, we don't know you, isn't a personal failure. It's a distribution problem or a proof problem. You don't argue with them about your worth. You solve it with better demos, stronger sales sheets, or if you have to, by building your own channel, just like Dyson did.
The ultimate maxim for this section.
Yeah.
Let your iteration count become your credibility. That volume of attempts is what separates the builder from the dreamer.
So our final section really focuses on how undercredit forces simplicity and this very specific recruitment of your earliest, most important believers. And we're going to look at 2 companies that achieved massive scale by starting incredibly narrow.
Let's start with WhatsApp.
Okay, subsection A, simplicity is a constraint.
The story of WhatsApp begins with this beautiful irony. Brian Acton, one of the co-founders, was explicitly rejected by Facebook in 2009.
He actually tweeted about his disappointment in not getting the job. It's still out there.
And that rejection became their structural advantage. It put them outside the dominant social media ecosystem, and it forced them to define themselves by what they were not.
Their response to undercredit was simplification and constraint. The idea didn't start as this massive messaging platform we know today. It started very narrowly as a simple status app, just a way to let your contacts know what you were up to.
And their defining strategic constraint was famously written on a Post-it note on Jan Koum's desk.
No ads, no games, no gimmicks.
Which wasn't just idealism, was it?
Not at all. It was a deeply strategic financial decision born from their experience working at places like Yahoo. They had seen firsthand how the ad machine corrupts product decisions
It forces teams to prioritize engagement metrics and distraction.
over user experience and privacy. So since they couldn't compete with Facebook or Google on scale or speed, they chose to compete on integrity, reliability, and clarity. They treated simplicity like a financial asset.
So they just refused to trade that long-term user trust for short-term revenue validation. Undercredit forces you to choose your constraints, and they chose the ones that maximize clarity and reliability.
And reliability, in the early smartphone era, was a competitive weapon. If your product does one thing perfectly, send a simple, reliable, secure message that costs almost nothing, your users become your viral marketing engine.
Because they trust the experience.
They trust it completely. They didn't chase that frantic, get big fast Silicon Valley model. They prioritized sustainability and control predictable revenue, initially with a small fee. And that focus on constraint led directly to clarity, reliability, and a viral reputation money just couldn't buy.
Focus beats feature creep every time. And this principle of choosing specific, simple constraints leads perfectly into our final case study on Jack Ma, who couldn't rely on any existing credibility.
Not even as a past job at Yahoo.
Right. Subsection B, borrowed trust.
Jack Ma's story is arguably the definitive case study in leveraging an undercredited start. He failed China's university entrance exam twice.
He was rejected from dozens of jobs, including, famously, from KFC, the only applicant out of 24 to be rejected.
He had no technical background at all. I mean, objectively, he was the least likely person to start a global tech company.
But the hinge moment was in 1995. He saw the internet in the US, and he had this vision, this realization of the immense potential, specifically the need for a commerce bridge to connect Chinese businesses to the world.
So he had the vision, but he completely lacked the institutional credibility, the technical skills, the investment network, all of it.
So he didn't wait to become credible enough to pitch VCs.
He couldn't. He understood that his first capital wasn't going to be money. It was going to be borrowed trust. The sources detail this perfectly. He gathered 17 of his friends and students in his apartment in Hangzhou and convinced them to invest in Alibaba.
Can you just picture that room? 17 people in a small apartment investing in an idea that must have sounded less like a business plan and more like a passionate, outlandish argument about the future. What happened in that room that proved his core skill?
That room teaches the core skill that scales later. It's the chain of belief. That first small circle that can say yes, your friends, your peers, a pilot customer, that's the true start of a movement.
Why is that?
Because you are forced to articulate your pitch successfully to people who know your flaws, who know your history, who have seen you fail before. If you can explain the problem, the solution, and the urgency in plain language to 17 friends well enough that they part with real money, you have learned the art of persuasion.
And that ability to recruit those small, specific believers first, that's the real competitive edge.
It is. When you lack institutional pedigree, you have to rely on intense personal conviction. Ma wasn't arguing for global respect. He was recruiting 17 specific believers based on proximity and shared history. And that mastery of recruitment, born from necessity, is what allowed him to later get $5 million from Goldman Sachs and then $20 million from SoftBank.
He started small, mastered the pitch under pressure, and then scaled the conviction. Okay, this brings us to the final synthesis of these 5 incredible strategies. How do we take the focus and specific recruitment of WhatsApp and Ma and turn it into immediate action?
We have 3 powerful final takeaways for you. First, write your post-it rule. What is that one sentence of non-negotiable constraint you will not violate?
This is your clarity statement.
Exactly. It might be, we will not chase enterprise contracts until our unit economics are proven, or no discounts that kill margins just for short-term growth. That clarity, born from constraint, protects you from temptations that ruin long-term wealth.
Second, choose one wedge you can ship in 14 days.
Narrow beats noble. Every single time. Don't try to build the whole empire that needs belief from 242 people. Build the smallest possible thing that proves demand and demonstrates reliability.
Just like WhatsApp started as a simple status app.
Precisely. Prove that one piece works, and let that proof be your leverage for the next bigger ask.
And finally, pulling from Jack Ma's origin story. List your first 17.
Identify that first small group of people who might be willing to borrow you their trust customers, peers, mentors, and make 3 specific asks of them in the next 24 hours.
And not generic asks.
Wow. Specific. Don't ask for generic advice. Ask for a pre-order, A clear commitment to a pilot program, a specific introduction to someone. Don't wait for confidence. Let action and specific recruitment build your confidence and your initial capital.
If you're undercredited, don't argue for respect. Recruit your first believers, let your simple, reliable product speak for itself, and let the results do all the talking.
So we have just completed a deep dive into how to leverage undercredit, transforming what feels like this painful personal limitation into a structural, unassailable advantage.
Let's do a quick review of the 5 strategies we've pulled from the source material.
We've seen that true wealth builders learn to 1.
Tolerate rejection longer than the competition. You treat no as data and use a no quota to build stamina. That was Howard Schultz.
2. Build undeniable assets and infrastructure systems, training, distribution, that don't need external permission to scale. That was Madam C.J. Walker.
3. Iterate the pitch systematically. You convert all that skepticism and rejection into necessary clarity and iteration speed. That was Melanie Perkins.
4. Outperform with sheer volume of proof and prototypes, choosing methodical commitment over protective pride, like James Dyson.
And finally, 5. Anchor to simplicity and recruit small believers first, creating that crucial, scalable chain of borrowed trust. And that was Coombe, Acton, and Jack Ma.
I think we've established pretty clearly that being undercredited is not a diagnosis of inadequacy. It's a structural barrier. But it's a barrier that forces precision, clarity, and stamina.
And those are the very qualities that create wealth that not only materializes, but actually lasts. It's resilient.
And if you look across all these stories, you see one common thread. The world rarely, if ever, rewards the first version of a great idea, especially if the person presenting it is undercredited.
The world rewards the refined version, the hardened version that has survived all that pressure testing from the market.
So we'll leave you with this provocative thought to reflect on. If your great idea hasn't found belief or funding yet, you're currently in a moment of low credit. How can you use this moment to build the system, the clarity, or the sheer volume of proof, the 5,127 attempts, that makes belief and subsequent success absolutely inevitable?
Rejection doesn't block wealth. Your need to be believed first does. Go build your proof stack.